episode of the Profitable Christian Business. I am so happy to have my friend Micah Pritchard with me today. Mike and I have been friends for a while now, although we've never met in person. We've had multiple conversations online. I really like what he does from a business standpoint. We're aligned a lot on faith. We're going to talk about that quite a bit. We're going to talk about his story. Just get ready to meet Micah. And with that being said, Micah, why don't you give a little introduction about who you are?
Yeah, so honored to be here today, Doug. For you, for your audience, and just being a part of it. It's awesome. It's so fun. So my story, well, we'll get into it a little bit, but at a high level, I am a father of four, aged 18 to almost 15. And my wife and I have been married 18 years. And so we're old enough to vote, at least in our marriage, which is great. And that's definitely like a big piece of it. And then career-wise, man, I've gone from small entrepreneurial and helping with startups to really large organizations and leading large teams. And so it's really interesting to see the path that God has led me through this path. It's not a path I would have chosen, Doug, but in that through so many different experiences to see where I am now and be able to look back and see all the different ways his hand was in place. So it is a lot of fun. I'm currently the COO, or I like to sometimes joke, the Chief Encouragement Officer for Service Reef. ServiceReef.com is really a platform for helping nonprofits, medical teams, as they're sending teams out into the field. Our goal is to make it so easy on the logistics side so that they can send twice as many and impact those communities. And so it's been a heart and passion of mine for years. We started about 12 years ago, but it was always a side hustle, nights and weekends, heart ministry type thing until just about 2 years ago. And so we'll talk more about that journey here in a little bit, but it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. Nice. And it's had some ups and downs and all over the place. So it's fun.
Well, I usually dive right in. Like you said some things in there that I would like to pick up on, but how long did you say you were married?
18 years now.
Wow. Awesome. Well, congrats on that. My wife and I are just past the 15-year mark. So we're trying to catch up.
Yeah. We joked when we hit 16 that our marriage was at least old enough to drive. So we were like, okay, like maybe it'll make it.
Isn't it funny? Like, I love that perspective is like, how mature is your marriage, right? When you think about it. And of course, we don't need to make this a marriage podcast, but how soon you get God involved in your marriage plays a key role, right? But anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole. Let me ask you.
We totally can if you want, Doug. At some point, because. Okay, not that we go now, but I would say as a part of the journey, as you go through this, like God didn't put us there to be in on our own, right? Like he gave Adam a job in Genesis 2 before he even brought Eve along. Like we're told in the African story, right? We have a job before even the fall of creation, before anything else. And Adam gets this job to name all the animals, to work through this whole process. And there is no one in the world that is nothing, no other creation, even though it was all good, still nothing for him. And whether it's in marriage or in business or in community or small groups or good friendships, leadership can be lonely. And so finding that community around you is super important. Super important.
Oh, you knowing me know that I'm passionate about all of that. So I love that you said that. Real quick. So just a fun question. Like, are you a coffee and Bible guy in the morning? Or are you more into late night study conversation?
By nature, I am definitely a night owl. However, my family of origin, we drink coffee all the time. So I will always have it by me. And so whether that's early in the morning or late at night, but definitely through time, it's adjusted through kids' schedules to be like more morning. But definitely I enjoy that time when I can drop off kids and come back and try to give myself a little bit of time just to kind of like breathe, do some devotion or listen to some worship, kind of enter into the day a little bit before I jump on keys. Doesn't happen every day, but really try to make that part of the routine.
Okay. So a couple questions about coffee and then a couple questions about maybe one or two questions about energy management here. So coffee, are you a coffee snob or is it just Folgers, Maxwell House?
I make up for quality with quantity. So I don't measure in the cups. I measure like in the pots. So like, if I get a couple pots in a day, I'm doing good.
Yeah. So that is funny. Like we're my wife and I are a little bit of coffee snobs.
Uh-huh.
When we went to Hawaii. One of the highlights of going to that awesome place was going to the coffee farm, um,
Yes.
because we love coffee that much. So, and then of course we brought some back with us.
Well, and that Kona blend and the other things you can get out there, I totally agree. Like, I don't mind the quality of coffee, but I'm not one to sit and try to perfect it myself. I'm like, just hook me up to an IV and let's get going.
Nice, but much like you are as well, we've gotten better, but we were often like 2 pots a day between her and I, coffee drinkers. We're 1 pot, but we're always like, should we make that second pot? I think we should.
Well, okay, so little secret behind the scenes. I actually have a single serve Keurig here. So in
Mm,
those moments where I'm like going like meeting to meeting and I'm like, oh, I don't want to make a whole nother pot. I just need a little bit extra today. Yeah. So that's an advanced tip there for you guys if you're really into coffee.
you've inspired me. Keurig in the office is what's needed. Hmm.
Yeah. I don't need it all the time, but like it's really nice when you're like, ooh, I only got 2 minutes before my next call. Let me just get a cup going and then I'm ready.
Can we talk about energy management a little bit?
Yeah.
Because we're on the subject of coffee and why we often eat coffee. You talked about being a night owl, and I know people have different flows, I guess, for lack of a better word. I felt like when I was younger, I was more of a night owl, but I get so much more done in the early parts of the day than I do at night. Can you kind of reflect on how your schedule works out, like when you produce the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll say a book that influenced my thinking on this is At Your Best by Carey Nieuwhof.
Mm,
And that book really helped me shift because it wasn't so much a time management as much as an energy management.
mhm,
And his argument really is you have 3 to 4 good hours a day. And so whether you're, the highest performing leader, the Elons of the world, or you're just a mom or whoever, like it doesn't matter. You have 3 to 4 good hours where you can spend it. And so the question really is, what are you going to do with that time that you're given?
mm,
And so can you find that time? And each of us have a different rhythm when our energy
mhm.
levels are high and when our energy levels are low. And yeah, we can take power naps. We can do other things. Like there's all kinds of science that's supplying that, right? Like that says, hey, this is good stuff. But the really is what I find is how many times do I sabotage that good time? Right. And
Mhm.
so, yes, I want to go grab coffee, but if that's during my window of green, like, ooh, should I be using it for that? Or should I use my yellow times, maybe more in the afternoon for connecting with others and doing those things that may still bring me energy and, because I'm an extrovert. However, in those moments, Doug, how do you leverage that to really drive your business forward is a key piece. And so that's a good resource for your folks that's out there is just At Your Best. And that's helped shape some of how I look at it and really trying to find those ideal times.
So, in addition to the links that we're going to share for you, we're going to share a link to that book. I want to sit here just for a minute because I think
Yeah.
we talk a lot about this on our calls that we have. We have a call called the Goal Getting Call, and it's all pretty much about goals and time management and energy management. Um, and you're so right that you need to prioritize. Like one of the things that I'm wanting to get better at is I started to get scheduled a lot of meetings in the morning, which tend to be a better focus time for me. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I really wouldn't like to have this meeting at 9 o'clock because at 9 o'clock is kind of like I can knock out like half a day's work if I focus from 9 to 11, right? Um, but then these meetings, so I've had to learn, and until I can get the other parties to adjust, right? I'm having to live there, so I'm having to um, navigate a little differently, right? But
Well, and I'd say, yeah, in that space, Doug, like it's not so much that you don't have meetings during that time because, and that's where I'm at too, is a lot of Mondays and Tuesdays are taken with a lot of project meetings and other stuff that's already been set up. And so I have to kind of like look out ahead a little bit and be like, okay, what is the next 2 months, 3 months out? Can I start blocking maybe some slots off
mhm,
there to give me that space? And then the question is, it's not so much that you have that like no one can touch it. Maybe that's true. If that's where
mhm,
you're creating content, if that's where you're finding your sweet spot and you need to do those things, absolutely save it, protect it, right? But it could be a really critical conversation that you need to have. It could be a
mhm,
business decisions like, hey, how do we think about where we need to go for strategy planning for 2026 or moving into these other places for
mhm.
the next year? that's also a space where you like, I know I'm going to be at my best in this window. And those kind of critical decisions, probably I need to have those conversations in that window too.
Very good point. Because what I tell people on that particular call is it's not just grading your task, because we tell them to grade their task as far as importance, like needle movers. How much of a needle mover is it? You also need to measure your meetings, right? Are your meetings needle movers? Are you having a lot of needle mover meetings, or are you just having a lot of little meetings, right? Um, so that's a great perspective. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Speaking of, like, as entrepreneurs, we're always wanting to recharge, right? So what is one way that you like to recharge?
I like to reach, well, there's lots of different ways. I'm in Colorado, so I get a lot of
Mm,
blessing for getting out
mm,
into nature or taking the kids camping or doing those kind of things. But with 4 kids in the stage of life we're in, a lot of it is kid activities, right? It's the soccer and the swim and like going back and forth to practice or games and that kind of stuff. And so, there's a bit of a shift that I've taken over the years. Instead of trying to kind of like, I have to go do these things, trying to lean in and go, wow, I get one-on-one time with my daughter for 10 minutes,
mm,
or I get
mm-hmm,
one-on-one time with my son for a few minutes and pick up in school. And so I'm trying to reframe that, Doug. That's been a part of the journey and the identity piece that's kind of God's been shaping in me, is to try to maximize that time and use
mm-hmm,
that. But then, even though I'm an extrovert, I get energy from being around other people and engaging. There's also time I just need downtime. I need some quiet. I need some space to be able to process. And so sometimes just being at the park and then either choosing that time to go walk or choosing that time to sit in the car and just kind of get a little bit of quiet or decompress from the day, gives me that option. Because it used to be that we could do this to and from the commute, right? And
mm-hmm.
now so many of us are home. I'm like, I found myself really having to shift of like, oh, I can't shift from this role to now being a parent or being a dad or being a husband or being whatever I need to be, right? There's no longer that natural built transition period in your days. And so that's been a struggle for me over time, is like, okay, how do I then find that so I can be fully present in the moment?
That is awesome, and I I don't think we've talked about that yet on this show, because there are so many entrepreneurs that now work at home, right?
Yeah.
There is a benefit of going to the office, and because I think men especially, they compartmentalize, right? I'm at work. This is my workspace, and and it's hard to do. I think it's harder for men to work from home, um, especially if other family members are there, because it's just, it doesn't feel like the workspace, right? Um,
Yeah.
so are I guess where I'm going with this, I think you shared a little bit of it, but do you have any other practical tips that you use throughout your day to kind of stay focused?
Yes. I mean, in part, I think it really depends on where you're at. And in this moment, you're right. Like, kids are sick and they
Hmm.
all go back to school in the fall, and then they become a large petri dish and everyone's just sharing everything, right? And you're like, awesome. So really learning to try to like, how do I value where my time is? And how do
Hmm.
I define what success is? And whether it's the energy elements
Mm,
of like at your best and like, okay, I can only give enough for 3 to 4 hours today. And I would
hmm.
say, Doug, like, if I can riff on this for a second,
Hmm.
I think a lot of times it starts in Genesis 1, right? And it starts
Mm,
in the space of like, in Genesis 1, we find a creating God who creates us in his image, right? I guess that's technically 2 or 3, but like in that space, he creates us in his image. And then he says, it's enough. It's
mm,
enough.
hmm.
And he lets us and then teaches us to do the same. And so the question
Hmm.
really is, and it's been a struggle, and it's been a struggle. We'll get into the journey a little bit of my identity and how some of that got morphed. But in that space, learning to say, like, what is enough? And then, God, can you do
Mm,
those kind of loaves and fishes moments of like, God, today I got sick kids. Today I have
hmm.
this. Today I thought I was going this direction. And then all of a sudden something in life hit me upside the head. Right. And in those moments, go, okay, can you take what I am able to give and multiply it? Can you take what I am able to give?
Mm,
And would you just let that be enough for today? And let me just rest in that, because I think there's always this struggle. And at work, it's easy because I can turn it off and it's not even in my purview,
hmm.
right? When you're at home, there's always things in your purview. And so the question
Hmm.
is like, I go up for a cup of coffee and all of a sudden there's like, oh, well, there's a kitchen. Then you did it, like whatever you need to go do. Right. So
Hmm.
it's staying focused, it's staying those, elements, but then also when those interruptions happen, how do I treat interruptions?
Hmm.
Am I curious about, okay, God, what are you doing in this? Or am I like, oh, so angry that like I got interrupted again and now I'm not going to get to this thing? Okay. What does success look like? How do I define what today is? And can I just rest in God, whatever I have today is, I hope it's enough for you, and let him work.
Such a big faith statement in there. In everything that you said, like you just like it, that is knowing that when you there's obedience in there too, but knowing that you're relying on God, right? That those interruptions will happen, and you may feel like the pressing weight of projects and work are just, but God, like sometimes we limit God so much is basically what I'm trying to get at. Is like, oh, we have this amount of time and we have to get this done because, again, it's all us. Wait, God can make things happen that you have no way of foreseeing. So yes, thank you for sharing that. And really, where I want to dive more so though is identity, because you've said it several times, and so many entrepreneurs struggle with this when they become entrepreneurs. They think this is who they are. I am an entrepreneur above all else. So is there, I think you alluded to maybe there's some part of your journey that revolves around that. Would that be right?
Yeah. Well, okay. So let me start with this, because sometimes people hear this and they're like, wait, you should have started with this. So my first job out of college was actually playing video games. And it's something that like, wait, you get paid to do that? And I'm like, yep. I did it for 3 years or so out of college. I was an undergrad in psychology and thought I was going to go into family systems or marriage therapy or whatever. And I was like, oh, and I'm like, anything I really need to learn, I'll learn in grad school, like whatever. Undergrad was fun. But then I got into working at Electronic Arts, EA Sports, all of that, and did that for 3 years. And it was awesome. It was awesome. And yet at the same time, it was a lot of work. Like I literally had a sleeping bag underneath my desk because you never knew when the next build would come down or when the next thing would. And you're like, I can't drive 20 minutes home and be back in an hour. You're like, I'm just going to sleep. Like, so you learned some interesting things, and it started to set up my expectation for what the real world was like. Right. Because it's the first job out of college. You're like, okay, of course it's normal to work 80 to 100 hours a week and during peak times, 116 to 120, right? Like everyone just does this. Right. And I felt rich because I couldn't spend the money because we were working all the time. So it was great. Fast forward though, it was an entry into a technology world. And then as I moved out to Colorado and got in, I have a banking background. And so I did banking for a while. Then I got into a startup, and, in that journey, and then went back into fintech and did mobile app development, and then went into cybersecurity. And I'd say like during that journey, it's interesting that I had a lot of different opportunities to learn and grow and really kind of get into leading teams and doing different things, which was awesome. And it was a lot of fun. And yet I would caution us with identity, be careful of where we look for validation, right? Because as you get promoted, as you get, more and more, pretty soon, like I found myself, just to use the fintech as an example, I started kind of more as an individual contributor, kind of came into a manager role, then got another team, then got another team, and got another team. And pretty soon, before I knew it, I had like global teams. I had, 86, 90 people under me. And so God just kept blessing it. And I was like, awesome. This is so cool. Like it's awesome. And I get to lead leaders and I get to do all these things. And I did that for 11 years. And yet all this time really kept boundaries as being really difficult. And this is where, kind of getting back to that marriage thing, sometimes our spouses can see it before we do. Right. And I say workaholism especially in the United States and the Western mindset is one of the few accepted addictions, along with caffeine, right? Like it's okay. If you drink too much, if you gamble, you're going to get fired. You work too much, you get promoted. And so in that space, as I found myself like moving up through the ranks within the company and getting more and different challenges, people were coming to me, and it felt good, right, Doug? Like, oh man, Micah, I can bring any problem. Like, even if it's not in your team, you'll figure a way to solve it. And like, let's look cross organizationally. And like, there was a lot of fun, and God has given, because part of the truth there is God wired me that way, Doug, right? Like there is a wiring, there are natural gifts and talents that he's given me to be able to do that. And yet I was misplacing where that validation was coming from. and not looking at it from him. I was looking at it
Mm.
from others and through that space. And through no intention, like young kids, all that stuff, you're so sleep deprived. You don't even know which way's up, right? So,
Mhm.
but in there, we realized we need to change them. And like I said, my wife realized it like, okay, you need to change. So I went over to a cybersecurity company here locally, which would had a lot less travel. But the problem is I tried to change scenery without really addressing the
Mm.
underlying problem. Right.
Mhm.
And so I changed
Mhm.
scenery first year. It's great. Like everything's going wonderfully. Then a new boss comes in and for whatever reason, it did not work out. And I would say like, I've never had that situation in my entire career, but it almost felt like I was at cross purposes with God. Right. And
Mm.
it's easy to point fingers at the toxicity that are present, leadership styles, name your thing.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
As I reflect back, I think really God was starting to remove some of those elements that I had that I had relied upon for so many years, right? And he starts to pull this back and pull this back, and all of a sudden, nothing was easy. All of a sudden, nothing seemed to make sense. HR was coming to me to ask me what was going on, and I'm like, I don't know. If you figure it out, like, let me know because I'm open. Like, I want to make this work. Um, and in that spot, like, felt like, all right, am I going to go somewhere else? And you go through the normal application process and get to the final interview of one or two folks, and just never worked out. So I'm like, okay, God,
Mhm.
you're in this somehow. But it was a really hard year, Doug. It was
Mm.
really, really hard. And how do I protect my teams from some of the toxicity I saw or was
Mm.
experiencing? How do I do these things? And I just had to really rely on him. And it was a daily thing of God, I need to have my identity in you and not in whatever this is. Like
Mhm.
whatever these other voices are that are coming in around and through that are trying to define who I am. I'm like, no, God, I need you in this. And every single day it was, I just need to release this to you, God, and I need to accept what you have for me today. And it
Yeah.
was it was a hard time. And just to kind of wrap that up, when I got into that, like daily, who do you say I am? Who do you say I am?
Mhm.
Right. Like, and really trying to focus on that time. Then you get on that call late at night with the senior leader and it's HR on board. And I'm like, oh, this is it. And I'm like, yeah, we're actually having a big event tomorrow and we're going to release like 35% of the engineering team. Right. And I'm like, oh,
Wow.
all right, how many of my guys are, how many of my folks are impacted? They're like, all of them. I'm like, well,
Oh,
you don't need me anymore. Right. So,
right.
and you work in tech and I've been on both sides of that table. Right. Um, but I was tempted to jump into another role and just like, okay, this is who I am. I'm a senior leader. Like, let me just jump into something and let's keep going. And God really used some godly folks in my life and to help guide me to, there's a new direction and something else. And so that's where Service Reef is something I helped create 12 years ago. But to step into that full-time role and then, oh man, Doug, that led to a whole new
Mhm.
thing because my
Mhm.
identity had been around success, driving profits and profitability and
Mhm.
making teams effective and maximizing whatever we had to get problems done. And now all of a sudden you're in a more solopreneur type environment where it's like, okay, it's me and a few, amazing folks, but they're part-time.
Mhm.
And how do we work into that? And how do I trust? Took a big pay cut, like all this kind of stuff. Like, God, okay, if you're in this, you've got to make it work. And 2.5 years later, he's still making it work. And I'm like, okay, but I'm still wrestling with some of the themes that are coming through that.
Oh man. Thanks for sharing all that. So, um, you had mentioned previously about definition of success, and I do want to get there, but before we go there, uh, I want to say this because this was coming to mind too. We all God has us as the men as being providers, and sometimes we take that as we start to make that the idol, right?
Mhm.
That we start to beat our righteous chests. I'm striving. I'm gonna. We become workaholics because we're wearing that mantle, right? That I'm the provider, and I'm just gonna work and work and work. I think we're missing the whole point. Yes, we're supposed to be the providers, but there's more to that than just the job, the work, right? So I would love your insights on that.
It came in counseling one night when my wife and I are walking through some stuff during this journey in the last 2 years, Doug. And I would say like with that community, like find those that are willing to help guide you along that path. right? Whether they're other business leaders, others that have been there before, older, younger, like it doesn't matter. A lot of times just that extra perspective in a godly community help. And I saw around me, Doug, that there were a lot of friends that I had and people that like basically made epic vacations because they were trying to make up for the time they couldn't spend, right? When you're working 70, 80 hours a week at nights and weekends or trying to support global teams, especially because you're like, I got to be up at 8 p.m. for a call and up at 4 a.m. the next morning for a call. And you're like, how do you make this work? But within that space, what I realized is we have a focus of, hey, I'm going to work hard, and then I'm going to retire and I can finally stop working, which is a totally backwards theology. We can get into that in a second. But in that process, I was realizing like, oh, I had this vacation. Then we try to do epic vacations because I'm trying to make up for the fact that I'm not in the dailies. Right. And I had to reject that. I had to be like, no. I need to be a dad, a husband, a father, a friend who can be there in the dailies. And if that's going to be who I am, to have those everyday ripples, then I have to say no to some things in order to be able to be present. And I think that's where kind of early on we talked about like, how do you handle interruptions? Like to me, that was a key indicator for myself. When I got angry, when I was upset that I was getting interrupted, it was a heart issue of what was going on that was like, man, something's not right here. Like why am I putting so much value on this when I should be able to be interrupted and be able to see, okay, God, what are you at? Right. And that's been a journey. It continues to be a journey. I'm not there entirely, Doug. But I don't know if that answers the question or speaks to what you were thinking. But
I think it answers it very well. We have more than one role. And I think so many of us grab that provider champion role, and that turns into a workaholic environment where you're sacrificing your other roles, right? And you just can't. That's a bad road to go down. So,
and yes, however, this is the environment we're in, right? If you get on an elevator with 6 other people that are sick, guess what the chances are of you getting off that elevator being sick, right? So like, this is the culture, this is where we are. And so the question really is, are we open to rethinking things in a different way, right? Are we open to evaluating, God, really, why are you here? Because all the things, like this is the whole thing about being Achilles and the story, like there's always a flip side. Your strength is also your weakness, right? That God has given you to do these things. However, you're starting a business, you're wearing multiple hats, to, hey, I'm leading a team and doing these things. Whatever it is, God has given you that talent and that ability and those skills and that experience. And so I would say in that process, like invite him into that on a regular basis, on a daily basis, invite him in, because otherwise that's like one small way to hopefully help from things getting too far off course.
That's so good. And I really am anxious to get to the whole meaning of success. And there's a question about how do you build something that's eternal, but I'm still not ready to go there because teams, right? Because this is something you have a background in. The contrast of that hustle culture, like let's talk about a leadership perspective, that hustle culture, we work and we work and we work, to leading teams with a more of a well-rounded life. Can you speak on those two variances?
Yes, that is I like to use the word tension, right? There is a tension. It's not like there's a right or a wrong. We often try to find balance, right? And I'm like, balance almost is things like, if you find it, then you're there. And I'm like, no, every day there's a tension, right? And as a leader, especially if you're leading teams, you are paid to do a job. And that is to get the most out of your team, to provide the most value to your business. Absolutely. And one thing that I would say, though, goes a little bit below that is really, I love C.S. Lewis's quote, and I won't try to quote it here, but he basically says, you never meet mere mortals. Everyone you meet would either be something you'd be tempted to worship or you would be terrified for. We are all eternal beings, right? And so if you come into leadership with the idea that every single person on your team, regardless of ideology or what they think or how they believe or what their backgrounds are, every single person is a unique creation of God, reflecting his image, right? We are all made in his image, and he wants us all to come into his kingdom, right? And so in that process, if I believe that this person, even if I don't agree with them, still at least has that intrinsic God given image inside of them, I'm going to treat them differently, right? They're not just something I can step on or move on to the next thing, but it's like, okay, well, what does this person need? And so in that leadership role, it's really looking at it from two lenses. It's looking at, yes, there's a business lens, but I always was like, I told my folks, like, you're a contractor. Like, your job right now, your full-time contract is with this company and to get the most, and this is where you are. But you need to think of it as, how do I leverage and grow and keep their best mind, their future self in mind, even as you're governing them now. And so my heart was always to be like, hey, let me help you understand and come to a deeper understanding of how God has wired you. Now, I couldn't always say that in every role I was in, Doug. But that was the underlying message, right? Like, that was my underlying philosophy. And as opportunity arose, absolutely, I would say it. But like, the goal is, I want to get the best. Doug, if you're my employee, man, I want to make sure that we get you in the right seat on the right bus at the right time, because I want you to thrive. I want you to go, I want to have connection with you in 5 and 10 years and be like, man, look at how you're changing the world. That's awesome. Right now, for this period of time where our paths are crossing, we are at this company and we need to have some goals. And yes, there's some headaches along the way, but my view is more eternal for that person. And how do I help them on that journey a little bit? And so that was kind of how I help manage that tension between, okay, the business needs this. And yes, I need to push some people sometimes to get them to do things they're not comfortable with because I need this. And yet at the same time, how do I encourage them along that path to become who they really need to be?
So I have this image, this leadership image of pouring into and extracting from, right? How much are you pouring in before you're trying to extract from, right? Because if all you do is extract, that person will be drained, right? You need to continue to pour in order to get the best out of them, right? So
yeah. Well, and I'd say, like, a lot of times it's not rocket science, but it takes initiative, right? It's your it's your one-on-ones. It's how do you act in meetings? How do you honor their time? It's ensuring that you're taking the time with them on a regular basis, whether weekly or biweekly. I wouldn't really go further than that, to just check in. Like, even if, like, hey, Doug, we don't have anything to talk about today, but hey, for 5 minutes, just tell me real quick, how's your weekend? How's life? How's it? Like, in this virtual culture, you miss that opportunity to just go like, hey, I catch them on the way to the office, to go get more coffee, or I catch them on the way out to lunch, or you miss some of those organic moments. So you have to just be more clear about creating it virtually that says, hey, this is something on our calendar. I'm not going to miss it. Like, I'm always going to have this at least on a periodic basis with you to help pour in. Right.
Yeah. I think a really good example is the company my wife works for. She was employee number 1. And the culture, I don't know if it was just organically built or I think there was a mix of organic and a lot of intention, right? And I just see how they pour into people, and how their company has grown from that, and how well people work together as a team and individually. I really think so much has to do with the culture that was built and that whole pouring in before you, not just extracting out, right? So
well, and Doug, one other thought that comes to mind is, okay, thinking of on the spiritual level too, God has given us our own kingdoms, right? Our own domains, our own chances to kind of like try this out, and he's maturing us along the way. Like, I was reading John 15 today, right? Like, I'm the vine, like, remain in me, right? So the idea of, if we have to remain in him, there's a chance that we don't. Right? Like, so how do we do this and remain in him on a regular basis, and yet bring those things where he's given it under his control and authority through that space? Because there's times when you're working in a hard culture, like, it's awesome that your wife has like, oh, here's a good culture. We can shape it from the beginning. Right. And that, I mean, the old quote is culture beats strategy, or eats strategy for lunch. Right. Like, I mean, that's, it does. And yet, even if you're a leader in a dark culture, like where it's not going well around you, okay, the question is, how can you be light? How can you do this? And I'd say, like, bring it under his authority, bring him into this process, even if it's not publicly or visible, just you personally, if this is a team that's been given to you, bring it in and start praying for them, start thinking through these things, and just try to be the light in that dark culture, right? Because that's where that really shines is, folks are like, well, I want to be on that team. Oh, okay. Well, why? Right? Like you can start to create the culture change. You can't influence everything else around you. Like there's too much chaos, but within this small realm, this is what I can control. This is what I can influence. Right.
Yeah. That makes me think of this too. Like you have a choice, right? You could be the light or you could give into the darkness. And you join the dark side.
Yes.
And then it just, so the choice is to be the light. You can't create transformation unless you're the light. You can be that one speck of light in the darkness that starts to spread, right? Otherwise you're allowing just the darkness, which is crazy.
And I'd say just start with yourself in that process. Like really work to, and that's part of where that identity piece and some of those other things come, Doug, is like, I had to focus, like I couldn't be that to the rest of the team if I was such in a place where I was getting pulled in on so many different side tangents and toxicity and other things. I couldn't be that light to others. Right.
Yeah. Practical steps on that, being in the word, right? Being in prayer. We just had a Bible study this morning, and there was a big talk about that, about the need for continuous prayer. Like God tells us to be in continuous prayer, to make it a habit, right? That is part of our lives. And the question came up, like in our busy lives, who has the time, some of us do, to devote 30 minutes to an hour of devotion, right? But I say that's God's time. God will, God will give it back to you. God will give it more back to you over and over, if you are just obedient. But it's not just prayer. Then prayer. Holy Spirit was with you the whole time. So prayer can be that 1 minute that you need to pray and get that clarity right from God. So I don't know if you have any insights around that, but just the practical steps to kind of keep being in that place.
Yes, I would say like one thing my wife and I have figured out with 4 kids and all the schedules, our best time to connect is like 8 to 8:15. We've dropped the kids off. She's still on her way to work, right? And we just call and and it's not a time for logistics, although that sometimes slips in. It's really just a time to like, all right, how can we pray for each other? How can we do these things? Because that's and you're like 15 minutes. Can you really, like, that's not a lot of time. And yet that's the max. We're like, everything else is chaos, right? So we found different patterns within our own schedule to bring that in. And so I'd say like, yeah, for your folks, like reevaluate your whole, how much time do you play on your phone? How much time do you do these things? There's probably time, even if it's not even in a 30-minute block. What about the 5 or 10 minutes before you get out the door to drive somewhere? Right. And then my natural tendency is to surround myself with noise. Okay. Put on the podcast, put on a book, put on like, instead of like, oh, okay, what if I spent 5 minutes praying and then I'm driving across town for 20 minutes, but I actually spend it in silence and reflect on what I just did. Right. Like that's good time with God in the car, like inviting him into this. And so get creative, have fun with it, because there's lots of ways to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. We're finally there. We're finally at the question that I'm going to ask that I've been anxious to ask, that I think is going to be super valuable. So we do a fill in the blank question. Well, first, we're not actually going there. We're going to do the fill in the blank question first, just so to make sure that we cover that, because it's included in every single episode. Your fill in the blank question is: my faith in Christ has taught me that success is really about blank.
My faith in Christ has really taught me that success is really about things that are eternal, not temporal. I think in that space, there's so many times I get spun up, Doug, about things, whether are we profitable or, and can it, like, where's this going to come? And they're talking about another tension, a key tension in the last 2 or 3 years has really been this tension between trust and fear. Can I trust the story that God's writing in my life, in my business, in my family, or am I going to be afraid? And you could look at it as scarcity versus abundance mindset. You could look at, like, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but in that key, one of the things I look at is like, how many times does God tell the Israelites to remember? And when we look back and we remember all the times he's shown up, and then I look forward, I'm like, ooh, how am I going to make payroll in 3 months? or 2 months, or what if this doesn't come through, or this client backed off and now I've lost that contract, or, like, and all the spin up of that is there's like, okay, God, there's fear if I look too far ahead, but you keep calling me to remember, to trust the story that he's writing in and through your life and through your business. And he's called you there for a purpose. And so I would say, like, I get caught up a lot in things that are temporal, things of this world, like, oh, what do we do this? How is this going to work? What is it? And I'm like, nope. Like, I need to think, like, I live in two worlds. How do I live eternally? And to me, how that boils down a lot of times is just that trust versus fear.
Nice. That is so good. So so I was going to use an example. I lost my train of thought. So recently, not that long ago, there was a point where I lost a pretty big client, and I was like, oh man, I was stressed about it. But lo and behold, 2 weeks later, I get 2 or 3 clients. It was 2 or 3 clients at once, and I was like, out of the blue, right? A referral from another client that I hadn't even talked to in a while, and just someone hitting my I think this podcast, and was like, hey, I saw what you do, and I would love for you to do some work for us. So I think that go back to that trust is like, it's that faith thing. You just got to trust that God's going to provide, right? And do not be anxious, do not fear. How many times is that said in the Bible, right? But yet it's so hard for us to carry that and not have that anxiety.
And I would say, Doug, like, we're human. It's natural to have fear. It is natural to have these things. Like, even Psalm 23, even as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, God, you are with me. And I think what I've learned a lot in the last couple of years is I don't need him so much as like delivering me or doing these things, as much as just, I need his presence today. I just need him here in this moment. And when I lose that, can I trust that, God, you're more at work in this situation than I am? You already know. I remember reading that a while, like, the Lord knows what you need before you need it. And that word is like, no, he like deeply knows. He experientially knows what you're going through. And he already knows that before you even bring it to him. And so it's like, oh, okay, God, can I rest in that today? Right? Can I just rest in the fact that you know what I'm going through? You feel it with me, and you're here in the moment.
Yeah. So here it is. What is the secret to building something that lasts eternally? You've alluded to it a few times.
Yeah. I think to build something eternally really requires partnering with God daily. Use those skills and talents and abilities and experiences that he has given you. Those are a gift. And with those traits and personality that is written in your God-given image, he wants you to walk through with that. And so treat others with that kind of understanding that what you do has impact in eternity. And so whether you're a doctor or a lawyer or a Fortune 500 leader or an entrepreneur that you're just starting out, God has given you that passion. God has given you that. And that is a reflection of who he is and his creativity and his desire for impacting the world in a positive way. And so lean into partnering with him and being curious about where he's going. Because you're dangerous. Like, as a leader, you are dangerous, and be dangerous for good. He's given that to you. Like, go make a difference. And even if it doesn't feel like it's in a kingdom world or a faith-based thing, he's put you into this role, into this thing for a purpose. And so if you can partner with him daily, even the most mundane things can have eternal ripples.
Yeah, that is so true. The small things, the mundane things. Yeah. so good. Can we talk about legacy for a second? Because I think you stepped into that just a little bit with that. And often entrepreneurs, we tie our legacy to our business, right? Which to me is an idol, right? That's not our true legacy. So I would love your insights, because we're talking about building something eternal, right? What is your take on leaving a good legacy?
I think we talked about the elevator we all live in, right? And the culture, the environment in the Western world that we live in is one of success. And I would say I would very strongly encourage you to redefine what success is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times we think of profitability. We think of like, I think of it like, hey, I'm working at Service Reef, even telling my wife last night, like I could retire in this. Like this is something I could do for decades. Like I would love it. I would love it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I don't know how culture is going to change. I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
technology is going to change. I don't know how these things are going to happen, Doug. And so the question really is not, okay, is my success the legacy I leave? And can I pass it on or could eventually sell a business and move into, you know, like, okay, our goal oftentimes is like, man, if I just had a nest egg, I could stop working
Mm-hmm.
and stop doing this thing. And I think a lot of times we buy into this mindset of work is bad, and work is actually part of our God-given desire.
Mm-hmm.
As I alluded to earlier, it's there in the garden even before the fall, right? What are we
Mm-hmm.
going to do in eternity if it's just sitting around and singing songs? That's probably some people's idea of the other place, right? So like
Yep.
like we're not just in a never-ending church service. It's we have a purpose, we have a goal. God has
Mm-hmm.
wired you in a certain way to make a difference in this world. And so the success is not so much, hey, what is the end result? The success is what is the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think redefining success in that way creates the ability to create a legacy, Doug,
Mm-hmm.
because in that, I'm not so focused. What's the American dream? Every kid could tell you, okay, my parents want me to do well in high school so I can go to college, so I can get a new job, so I can, you know, go out and make a difference in the world, right? I mean, that's just kind of the American mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been really challenged in the last 5 to 10 years socially,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also like, what is that going to be? And the question is really like, how often do we say, you know what, be a missionary, be an entrepreneur, drop out of high school? Like, because there's things that God has for your kids, that God has for others there that may have a huge impact. And so the question is, can we teach them instead to live with God, to partner with him on a regular basis, instead of just kind of taking the world's definition of success? Oh, I have a big retirement. Now I can retire and cruise the world, right? And you're like, yeah, how many people get to that point? And then when
Mm-hmm.
what is it? Most business owners like die within 3 years of selling their business, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's, the stats are amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
because the question is, we put our identity in this.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question you ask is like, okay, legacy, what do I want it to be in 5 years? Spend some time. What do you want it to be in 10 or 25
Mm-hmm.
years? Take some time and go, okay, God, when I'm old and sitting on a rocker on my front porch, what do I want to remember? Right? And talk to that future self and go, oh, probably this isn't going to be as important, but are my kids still talking to me? do
Mm-hmm.
I have good relationships? Has my marriage been, you know, something that was life-giving over this time? Those are the things that really linger. And so I think as you look at with legacy from that perspective, just as even as a thought exercise, it starts helping you redefine what success is even in the day-to-day.
Yeah. I bring this up. This is probably the fourth or fifth time I brought this up in conversation, just because it's so fresh. What's happened recently, and because it's pertinent to what you just said. A man that was only 31 years old, I think a lot of people would be proud of the legacy that he left, because he, what it was he exactly said. He just wanted to be remembered for sharing God's word or God's light or something along those lines, and I think he did a great job of that, right? Um, so I just think that really challenged me, right? Personally, that how can I that to be remembered legacy wise, I want to be remembered for being a champion for God,
Yeah.
and um, all the others, as he said, everything else is temporal, right? So, um, what's the best thing that you could be remembered for is shining God's light in this world, right?
Well, Matthew 6, I think it's 33, says like, seek first his kingdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of this will be given to you. And so the question is, we often flip that, right? We're seeking everything else first and then going like, okay, God, I'll fit you into the margins. And so it takes trust to really like flip that on its head and really take him at his word that says, God, I'm going to seek you first. And then I'm going to trust the rest of this to come about because you know, right?
Mm-hmm. And just to go back to what you're saying about, I think you said something early on, and then you kind of talked about a little bit, the idea of retirement, right? I don't, I love what I do. I can't see myself retiring. And we have a purpose, like you said, and many people, even not even after selling their business, but even just after they stop working their job, they lose their sense of purpose unless they pick something else up that gives them
Mhm.
purpose. Um, so I guess just dive a little bit deeper on your thoughts on retirement.
It is a developing concept to me, Doug, and I would say that I'm not always great at it because I get caught up in it too, right? So,
Yeah.
um, we talked about kind of more the theology of work and why work is there and why we keep working, right? And it's not in that space, but I'd say a couple things that are a little bit different, a different way of looking at it. I'm a football fan. I enjoy fantasy football. I enjoy all the sports. I'm one of the few people you may have ever met that actually tore their left ACL 4 times. So like
Wow.
sports have been good. Like, of course, each successive story got less and less interesting, but, like in that space, like I love sports. It's a lot of fun. And when we're in football season now, and I'd say like a lot of times your first 20 years are kind of like that first quarter, right? You're coming
Mm-hmm.
out kind of playing around like, all right, what is the rules? How do we kind of go? What kind of game is this going to be? Second quarter, you're trying to make a couple of quick adjustments. You can't do a lot, but you're kind of building towards halftime, which is about 40, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then you're suddenly like, okay, now we're at halftime. Let's make some adjustments. What is really those things that are going to be, we've created a little bit of a game plan. We've kind of had some success on some things. Okay, how do we leverage that? You come out in the third quarter, right? And you've made that adjustment. But where the game is won and lost is often in that fourth quarter. And I'd say
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that's key, Doug, is in that 60 to 80, you are not done. Like one of the biggest fallacies I had, and God totally hit me upside the head with a 2x4
Mm-hmm.
last year, is I just kind of thought I was done. Like, God, I'm good. Like, I have a lot of lessons. I feel like we're walking closely together. Like, I'm good. I'm done. Like, I don't need to, I've kind of plateaued. I'm as good as I'm going to be. Right, Doug? And he's kind of like, in his own way, was kind of like, really? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you think that? Like, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess you're right. Like, there's always more, right? There's always more
Mm-hmm.
that we can do and dive in. And I just strongly encourage, like, our worth and our definition is not always in what we do. As we get older, we can't produce
Mm-hmm.
as much as we did in our 20s and 30s. It's just scientifically
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
proven. And yet our brain has already been rewired to be more focused on wisdom and balance and maturity and driving those things. And so, leverage that and trusted like God had a purpose in this. Science is catching up finally, but God had a purpose in all of this. And I'd say wherever you find yourself in the first, second, third, fourth quarter, you're not done yet. Even John 15 today, I'm the vine, I'm trimming. He's in that process of maturation. Will you open up and say, okay, God, would you just father me? Would you just mature
Mm-hmm.
me? I invite you into whatever this is. This could be a really hard thing, health or job or whatever, right? And you go, God, I don't know what to do, but just I invite you into this. And just invite him in and let him mature you in that process, Doug. I think is just such a good thing because he'll guide you kindly wherever you find yourself.
Yeah, that's good. Mentorship, right? I'm thinking that like you are doing a disservice to the people. Like you've gone and gained all this experience and wisdom throughout your life. When you start to get in that third and fourth quarter, if you're not pouring that back into the people that are coming up behind you, you talk about something that you could really do with your third and fourth quarters. That's probably one of the best things that you can do.
Yeah. And look around you. There's in your church, in your community, at your kids' sports events, there's always someone that is at some point just a little bit off from where you're at. And you can help each other in that process too.
Yeah,
Like look for those opportunities that God brings up.
yeah. Well, we haven't talked hardly at all about Service Reef, and I want to touch on that for sure. So, tell us a little bit about Service Reef and how you help ministries and all those type of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So um I'll even tie it into kind of the identity piece a little bit because around 2013, I was finishing my grad school, had just had our second child, career was starting to bloom, all that stuff. I got laid off and I tore my ACL for the second time. So it was just like one of those moments of like, I was about to slide into a deep depression. Right. And in that space, I got laid off and it was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And it was really a shakeup for my marriage and for everything else. But in that space, it gave me 6 months of total free time to like, yeah, search for another job. But that's when we launched Service Reef. It was already in process, but it needed that final push to get back. And so looking back now, 10, 12 years, God allowed for that, not only then to set me up for another career that I did for 11 years, which was awesome, but in that space, like really focus and get it launched. And what we found out early on, so what is Service Reef? Service Reef is really an online platform to allow churches, nonprofits, schools to help run their teams and trips better. We really want to be in this mobilization space. How do we mobilize people to get out into their communities and out around the world? And we found that leading a team, whether it's a 10-person medical team or a bunch of students to go to Australia or to do a VBS camp or whatever, to lead that, it takes about 150 hours of coordination effort between the fundraising, the tasks, the forms, planning, all that kind of stuff. Our goal is to cut that by about 75%, cut it down to about 50 hours or so, so that that organization can do twice as many trips the next year, right? We want to help impact whatever community you feel that you're needing to go serve. We want to be able to do that twice. And so we've had schools that started with like 5 student mission trips, and then they went to 10, and now they're at 15, right? Or churches that are, hey, we're maxed out. We can only do this number of many, maybe 5 or 10. And then the senior pastor's like, man, I feel like a calling. Like God's really wanting us to expand out. Can we do 20? And they're like, no, there's no way. And they're like, wait, actually, I think we could. Like, because our whole goal is to let technology power and automate a lot of the process. So that way you can grow as God leads you into the areas that he's already led you. So it's fun. It is a blast. I get to work with kingdom-minded, both sending agencies, those are like trying to send full-time missionaries out into the field, as well as churches and nonprofits and medical agencies that are trying to make a difference in specific communities. And so just a quick story, like the flooding in Texas that happened a couple months ago. And we had a client that was one of the first ones on site coming in for a crisis, trying to help clean up the community. And they were the first ones into some of these areas around Texas. And they were organizing 1,200 volunteers, local volunteers that would come out to clean, to help, check on cars, to get debris out of the way, et cetera. And the first day, they typically have done this, and they have 2 volunteers that work 12 to 15-hour days handling all the questions, right? First day, they had 15 questions. They tweaked a couple things. The next day, they had 0. The volunteers thought the system was broken because they were like, how do we do this with 1,200 volunteers? There's no way. Like, nope. That's where technology comes in, right? A good messaging, adapting, tweaking, you can run those kind of things. And now all of a sudden your volunteers are free to go do something else, right? So that's really the heart, Doug, and kind of where Service Reef falls in.
So I have a couple questions around that. Is it just software? Is there consulting? Is it done for you? Is it done with you? I know that's several questions in a row, but
yes, we definitely tailor it to what the organization or the church needs, right? And so there's some churches that have been running this for a while. They kind of have their process down. And so in those cases, we do have some onboarding or some one-time kind of consulting, Doug, to just help them translate what they've done into the system. But for the most part, it's a monthly subscription, and they just kind of pay for the number of trips they need active at any moment. And so they cycle through often. We have like a church now that's kind of spinning up because they're like, hey, we want to do like 20 local serve events, like just get out into our community. It's really easy to organize, and we save a ton of volunteer time because we then handle all the notifications and reminders and stuff. And so there's a lot of ways to like leverage it. We even have a school that's using it for field trips this year. Like that's not really our modus. Like we're not like, oh, let's get field trip forms, but that was what they were really struggling with. Sure. It's just form collection, right? And so if we can automate that from the parents and make it easier for the staff, we can help in that area.
Nice. So where do people, I think I know the web address, but I'm gonna let you say it. Where do we want to send people to find out more about that?
Yeah, so definitely you can go to servicereef.com, all one word, Service Reef, or you can go to servicereef.com/Micah to find out more about me or how to engage in that process. I'd love to meet you, and just if I could be an encouragement to any of your listeners through that process, I'll have a link there you can reach out and put some time on my calendar, and I'd love to just get to know you and help wherever your journey is.
Awesome. I ask one last question on every episode because I feel like there's often something that's left unsaid that is on your heart. So what words of wisdom, encouragement, what do you have to tell anybody that's listening?
Yeah, I would say wherever you are at this moment, dear listener, like God is with you in that moment. And he has given you the talents and the skills and the abilities and the experiences to be able to make an incredible difference in this world, in your family, in your community, in your work. And I would say, like, my encouragement would be just be curious and say, God, what are you up to here? When things come aside, just ask him first. God, help me interpret what this is, because he wants to guide, he wants to mature. As John 15 says, he wants to mature you and prune you into who you need to be. And nothing you've been given is an accident. He is writing a story in your life. And the question really that all of us have is, can we trust that story that he's writing? Can we trust in the story, trust in the author that is writing that? And yeah, just blessings on that for you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Micah. This has been amazing. So many good, valuable nuggets shared. Thank you, listeners. And until next time, keep moving forward. All right. I think that was good. One thing is it